Alright guys, we're back staring at my engine bay, and in this video we're going to talk about what you need to do to build your B58 and prepare it for a 9-second quarter-mile pass. And as always, this information is going to vary a little bit, so I'm just going to kind of give you guys some general information on what you should look at if you're looking to build your car to run a 9.9 or better, and hopefully this will help you out. Make sure that you're paying attention to your car and your build, figuring out what works best for you, and just make sure that you and your tuner are reacting appropriately, and that'll give you the best opportunity to hit that pass. Now, first things first, I just want to say, because I know somebody out there is going to be upset if I don't say it, but this is definitely possible with the stock turbo. Speaking of which, the first 9-second B58 was actually the stock turbo Supra from Speedy Mufflers out in Puerto Rico. And basically what they did was they ran it on race gas with a huge shot of nitrous, and they were able to get up to, I think, like a 9.7 quarter mile. So you guys can do what you want with that information. Moving right along. So for people that aren't interested in nitrous, you basically want to try to target at least 700 wheel horsepower on your build in order to get it into the 9-second range. And this is just kind of what's typical. I know some cars are a little bit lighter, and whether you have all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, you might have different kinds of performance off the line, but that power range is what's typically needed at a minimum to get you into the 9-second range. So for a turbo option, you can do it with a hybrid turbo. There are several people out there that have done it with a hybrid turbo, but that's right around the limit of the turbo itself. Most hybrids are rated for around 700 to 750. So you're going to want to pretty much completely max it out. You're going to be running 30 plus PSI with port injection and really high quality fuel in order to get yourself in that range. Now, of course, if you don't want to deal with that, you can go to a full frame turbo. Any of the big turbo kits on the market will have offerings that can reach 800 to 1,000 plus horsepower. So that'll definitely make sure that the car is capable of getting you into the 9s without feeling like you're maxing out the turbo setup. But obviously, if you're doing all of that, you're approaching the limits of a lot of different components. So this is kind of that time where you have to make a decision if you want to really build up your car and prepare it for the worst, or just kind of run it as hard as you can and see what happens. The most common thing that I see failing around this range is the transmission. And the good news is that you can kind of work around this, because in order to hit a 9-second quarter mile, you don't necessarily need to shift into the weakest gears of your trans. The ZF8 speed maxes out around 140 miles an hour in 5th gear, and if you don't have to shift into 6th, you have a really good opportunity to basically put a lot of power and put a lot of torque down without going into that weak gear and causing it to slip. Now, you'll just need to pay attention to it yourself, because that top speed will depend a lot on your wheel and tire setup. But generally speaking, you should be able to squeeze out a high 9 without shifting into 6th gear. You also can try to limit the amount of torque that you're actually putting out in your tune, but that will make it harder to get into the 9-second range. You obviously want to put out as much torque as possible on your launch in order to get your best 60-foot time. So again, you just kind of need to pay attention to how the car is performing and think about how far you want to push the car in order to get it off the line fast. But obviously, if you don't want to have to worry about that, a built transmission is definitely an option. Pure Drivetrain Solutions is one of the most popular resources to find a built transmission. Also, on the cheaper side, a lot of people are simply getting HP70s from diesel BMWs, and those bolt up to our cars with some slight modifications and adapters. It's rated for 700 Newton meters of torque instead of 500 Newton meters. And just like the stock transmission, it's underrated. So a lot of people are seeing really good numbers by simply swapping out for an HP70 and then continuing to push the car further. At this point, you're also going to be approaching the limits of the intake manifold. Primarily from running higher boost levels, you're going to run a risk of cracking it and creating a boost leak. So this is a really good time to upgrade to an aftermarket intake manifold, so that way you know it's capable of handling higher boost levels without getting damaged. Also, the upgraded intercooler itself will be a significant advantage, because when you're running at the track, you're going to be parked in the lanes, and while you're doing that, there's no airflow over the intake manifold or your heat exchanger to help keep your IATs down. So that's why you see a lot of people with ice packs and different things while they're waiting in the lanes to try to keep their car as cool as possible. With an upgraded intake manifold, that'll give you a better opportunity to have the best IATs possible throughout your pull. I know even some of the intake manifolds I've seen actually drop in temperature as you get to higher speeds, because they're performing so efficiently. So That's a really nice upgrade to have to make sure that your car is able to handle all the extra heat you're going to be throwing at it. Also, the nice thing is those intake manifolds come with provisions for port injection, nitrous, any other auxiliary controls that you have can find boost reference taps off of the intake manifold as well. So it's just a nice suitable upgrade to make the whole system work better and give you everything you need to push the car further. And lastly, of course, there's the engine. And I know this is kind of a hot topic because we're starting to see faster and faster cars get into the 9s and even the 8s on a stock engine. That's definitely going to vary a lot. If you have a Gen 2 B58 with the low compression motor, then I definitely would expect that one to be able to handle higher boost levels and higher amounts of power without damaging anything internally. But especially for those of us with Gen 1 B58s or early Gen 2s that still have the 11-to-1 compression, you're going to be approaching the limits of the engine. In this range, it's kind of hit or miss. Some people have really good luck with the stock engine, and some people blow right at the 10.0 range. So again, just pay attention to your car, make sure you're checking your plugs and just making sure that nothing is shifting or moving in a direction it shouldn't to make sure your car stays together. Otherwise, this is a great opportunity to build your engine. You'll be able to make it future-proof for whatever your goals are. Most people just do simple rod piston setups. I haven't seen a lot of people building the head or doing anything crazy, but I think more of those options are going to be coming out in the future now that B58s are getting faster and faster. Now remember, just building the engine to make power isn't everything that you need to get down the quarter mile. So at this point, it's highly important to get a good tire setup. Whether you're all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, you'll want to get at least an R-comp or a radial in order to put the power down and get a really good launch off of the line. Also, to go hand in hand with that, this is a good opportunity to upgrade your drive shaft and your axles. I know a lot of people are snapping them even on lower power tunes with just a really aggressive tire setup and good prep. So there are several companies that will make you custom drive shafts. Unfortunately, I don't know many that have off-the-shelf options, but if you talk to local car companies or even just search online, you'll find places that can build you a drive shaft. All they'll need is a couple dimensions from your car, and then they can design it and send it to you. And then lastly, don't forget about weight reduction. All of the BMW B58s that I've seen in the 9s have weight reduction. So of course, those are things like removing the rear seats. You can remove the passenger seat, remove the driver's seat, and replace it with a racing seat that's lighter than the stock one. This will all help make the car go a lot faster without actually putting any extra stress on your engine or your transmission. And then of course, that's something that's completely reversible and you can put the whole stock interior back in your car for your daily driving needs. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. At this point, it can definitely get expensive fast, so just do your research. Make sure you're paying attention to your car and how it's performing. Don't be afraid to put a little extra money in preparing your car for racing conditions instead of just trying to push, regular summer tires and full interior cars into the 9s. This is really a point where it takes that extra push to get it over the line for a lot of people. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you guys have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.